Adding and subtracting complex numbers. Okay, it's all written out up here. If we had two complex numbers added together, you're going to add the real parts and add the imaginary parts, keeping the I with the imaginary parts, or subtraction, very similar. All right, these aren't that difficult a problem, so let's jump right in. We have two complex numbers being added together in this first example in part A. How I would work this is I would simply work on getting rid of our sets of parentheses, dropping these sets of parentheses, and because it's positive out in front of this first set, we can simply write this as 3 minus 4i. So none of those signs change. And because it's positive or a positive 1 out in front of the second set of parentheses, as we distribute that, neither of these signs change either. So 2 plus 5i. From here, we can drop back onto something we've done several times in the past. I know you've been working on this. Basically, just think of this as combining like terms. Now, what we could do is we could group the real parts together. We could say, well, the 3 plus 2, those are like terms. Let's put them next to each other. And then the negative 4i plus 5i, those are like terms. Let's put those next to each other. So basically, I flip-flopped these middle two terms and rearranged it. All right, from here, basically just combining like terms. 3 plus 2 makes 5. Negative 4i plus 5i's makes positive 1i. And we're done. On the second one, a little bit different that we have a subtraction in between, but a very similar process that you want to work on clearing out your parentheses. So the first one has a 1 out in front, so negative 5 plus 7i. That 1 out in front, as you distribute it, doesn't change any signs. But here on the second set of parentheses, you want to be careful that you can visualize this as a negative 1 that needs to be distributed. So negative 1 times negative 11 makes positive 11. And negative 1 times positive 2i makes negative 2i. Again, this really is just combining like terms. At this point, we have negative 5 plus 11, and I could rearrange these, or you can just do it in your head. 11 minus 5 makes 6, and 7i minus 2i's makes 5i's. So our real part here is going to be the 6, the imaginary part is going to be the 5. All right, let's try one more of these in this video. This time we start with radicals over top, some negative numbers. So the first thing we want to do on this is work on simplifying down the square root of negative 4 and the square root of negative 25. So as you get going on this, I'm going to bring the negative from out in front that comes along, and then I'm just focused on the square root of negative 4. Well, that really is the square root of negative 1 times 4. And I'm trying to show my work as we go that I'm going to bring along that minus 4 from out in front. And then underneath here, I'm thinking negative 1 times the square, negative 1 times 25. And in showing all my work, I'm going to say negative 1 gets its own square root multiplied by the square root of 4. The 4 gets its own square root. Minus 4, square root of negative 1, square root of 25. Really, I'm showing all my work. You're going to get comfortable with these, that you'll be able to jump to our answer a lot faster. But take your time as you go. I hope this makes sense as we're splitting this up, that we had two things multiplied together underneath the square root. Our square root rules say that each one can get its own square root. All right, from here, the final simplifying down, I'll bring the negative along out in front. The square root of negative 1 by definition is I. The square root of 4 is going to be 2. So really that's negative 2i. Next, I'll bring along that minus 4. The square root of negative 1 is going to be an I, and the square root of 25 is going to be 5. All right, so I have negative 2i, just rearranging that first term. Now I'll multiply the 4 and the 5 together, so negative 20i. And then to combine these like terms is basically how I'm going to think of this. I'm going to get negative 22i. Or you could say 0 minus 22i if you want to see this, so you can see the real part and you can see the imaginary part. Or negative 22i should be an acceptable solution on this as well. All right, hope this helps out as you're working on complex numbers, working to simplify down with addition and subtraction. Good luck.